We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It's Thursday, kind of a busy week going on, so we have plenty to talk about. Give you a heads up on this cold thing. I still have it. It's getting better every day, but not quick enough for my liking. So the good news is I got the hot tea. I got some cough drops. And later today, I'm going to go to the doctor. Not specifically for the cold. I've got to have a checkup on a couple of other things. And when I go there, I'm going to say, look, doc, I got this fucked up cold. It's been lasting too long. Give me something for it. Now, whether she will or not remains to be seen. But I'm going to put on my best persuasive voice in spite of the cold and see what we can't get done. This shouldn't be hanging on for 2 weeks, although everybody I know that's gotten the cold has had it for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So I'm not ready to do this for another 2 weeks. So we'll see if the doctor has something to say about it and can help me out. Now, before we get started, I want to tell you a couple stories. Yesterday, we had a good day. My granddaughter stayed home sick from daycare. My son has to go to work. So my wife and I offered to watch the grandkid while he's at work, which we love to do. We only did half the day, and thank God for that, because by the time we were done, we were fucking tired. She's a mover and a shaker, and Grandma and Grandpa can't keep up with her as much as maybe we could when we were younger. Anyhow, so we go over there, we're coloring, we're singing and dancing, we're playing hide and seek, which is her favorite thing. She's not real good at it, but she likes playing it nonetheless. And you have to go through the whole process. You know exactly where she's hiding, but I have to go through every other section in the house before I get to her. And then, of course, it's a big reveal, and there she is. And, after about 4 or 5 times, it's a little boring, but it's my granddaughter, so we play the fucking game. Anyhow, we leave there about 5 o'clock or something, and both of us are very tired. My wife has to get up early, and I'm sitting here doing the podcast with a cold, kind of tired, but what the fuck? It was a good day. I'm glad we did it. It's always fun to see her. And you know what's funny is we got her hooked on a song, an oldie. Remember Wake Me Up Before You Go Go? Yeah, she likes that song. And I think the reason she likes the song is because if you remember how the song starts out, it's jitterbug, jitterbug. But we changed it to Junebug, given her name is Junie. And the song starts that way. And then after that, she's bouncing around, dancing with Grandma. And Grandma's getting tired. But we had a great time. So I'm in a good mood, in spite of the fact that I might be a little tired. I wanted to tell you one other story that I told on TikTok, only because it really made me smile. It's very heartwarming, I think. And it just kind of happened out of nowhere. My wife and I went to a casino, as we're wont to do in one afternoon last week. When we get in the casino, my wife goes one way, I go the other way, because we play different things. We never win a lot. We a lot of times break even, maybe make a little bit of money, rarely lose a lot of money, because we don't go in there with the intention of gambling a bunch of money. It's just for fun. It's just for recreation. We're not looking to subsidize our income with it. So anyway, I go my way and I'm playing one of the machines, not winning is often the case early on. And I get bored with it. If I'm not winning, I just kind of stop playing, because if I can't win, it seems pointless to keep pouring money into something, even though we expect to lose the money. So I'm hungry, and I go back to this little stand in the back that sells food and different things. And I go back and get one of their $5 hot dogs. I get a diet soda, and I go to sit down, because there's a smattering of tables around the area for people who grab a hot dog or cake or whatever they grab, and they can sit down. So I go to this table and I sit down. Now, the moment I sit down, an elderly woman, maybe 80, 85 years old, sits down across from me. I don't think too much of it. There's not a lot of tables here. Maybe she had it before, but I was sitting down first. And she sits down and she looks at me very seriously. And she says to me, I don't think my husband would like this. I said, I'm sorry. She said, I don't think my husband would like the fact that you and I are sitting at this table. I said, well, ma'am, I'm just eating a hot dog. I'm halfway done. I'll be out of here in a couple minutes. Don't worry about it. She goes, no, I just think he might be mad about it. I said, well, no worries there, ma'am. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'll eat this. I'll be out of there. Will be no problems. I'm a lover, not a fighter. And she goes, don't worry about it. He's not very big anyway. I said, cool. And I can see she's wanting to play with me here. A little bit of a verbal jousting. And she's 80, 85 years old. I'm thinking, that's kind of cool. That's pretty cognizant for a woman of this age. So I say to her, I'm a little concerned too. And she says, why? I said, well, my wife's here too. And if she were to come by seeing you and I sitting at this table and maybe your husband who's angry with me, this ruffian, I can't say what she would do. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little afraid of her myself. And she says to me, oh. She says, you know what I think we should do? We should act like this never happened. We should never speak of it again. And I said, well, discretion is the better part of valor. And I get up to walk away. And then I remember this line from the old movie Casablanca. And I look at her and I says, you know what though? She says, what? I said, just remember, you and I will always have this table. And she smiles a little bit. I turn around and I walk away and I got this big smile on my face because there was the two of us, 63, 85, and we're just kind of jousting, having a good time. It's very innocent. It's very nice and it's very heartwarming. And it's been a long time since I've had a conversation like that just made me feel good. So it was kind of a fun situation. And all I know is when I go back to the casino, I'm looking for that woman. Anybody who can hang with me in that conversation, I want to talk to some more. Anyway, we've got some emails, so let's get to them. This one comes from Faye. Must be a new listener because I don't recall the name. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I've been listening to you now for over 3 months. I have to say you really made me more informed and more willing to interact with my fellow Americans. I'm a reluctant participant, though, that being a moot point. I see my patience is stretched very thin with these maggot brains in this country. I can't help but notice the hardcore maggots don't realize they're sheep and the wolf is their leader. You might think I'm an asshole. No, I don't, for saying this, but I hope he takes them all down with him into his quicksand of delusions. I'm a firm believer that all men and women have the right to make their own mistakes, right or wrong. If they fall for that orange deceiver's lines and invest money in his doom campaign, so what? A bought lesson is a taught lesson, usually. Let's hope they learn from being swindled out of their money by this reality TV game show host. He's never been nothing more than a con man with a little better access to a biased media. I really have to thank you for being a real woke American. This is a political war for our country's future on this planet. Welcome to the party, pal. Stay strong, stay focused. Your fan, Faye. Well, I got to tell you, Faye, somebody who's reluctant to speak out, you seem pretty forthright there. And I appreciate you writing the email. And as you're working into being more interactive with some of these dumb fucks when you have occasion to have to do that, I'd encourage you, maybe you want to come on the show. I appreciate the emails. Keep them coming. Maybe you want to come on the show and talk. It's relatively anonymous, although we can see your face on the video version of the podcast, but we're all amongst friends here. We don't have any of those crazy Trump-fucks coming in and listening to the podcast or watching the podcast that I know of. Certainly not enough to matter. We'd love to hear from you directly if that's something you want to do. All right. The next email starts, hey, hi, Boomer. Good grief. You can construct some classics. and I quote, "Chuck, what the fuck are you doing, you old fuck?" I did say that regarding Chuck Grassley. That's like that how much wood can a woodchuck thing. That made my morning. Fuck you, Chuck, you old fuck. You've literally lifted my entire day, Boomer. Best garage door, Jeff. P.S. Can you imagine if after the civil trial ends and breaks Trump, Letitia James walks up, real serious to a news conference, unfolds her papers, and then suddenly in her best Chris Rock energy shouts, "Peekaboo, motherfucker." How great would that be? Be fucking awesome. I don't think she'll do it, but I'd fucking do it. All right, garage door, Jeff. Thank you. You make some good points as always. Next one comes from a woman by the name of Melody. Might be a new emailer. I'm disappointed that John Eastman is getting a deal. How reliable is it that Eastman is one of those ones getting a deal? What she's talking about is the situation down in Georgia. We talked about the news story yesterday where Bonnie Willis came out and said that Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, and Mark Meadows will not be getting a deal. The rest of them will be offered a deal. I understand what you're saying about John Eastman, whether he's going to get nailed or not in Georgia, but don't worry too much about Eastman, because if Georgia doesn't get him, Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. will. He was part of that whole group meeting at the Mayflower and all that shit, so he'll get got. I think Fonnie Willis has picked out her targets. I think they are well chosen. Giuliani, Meadows, and Donald Trump. You know, it's interesting. Mark Meadows is in the very same situation. He has immunity in Washington, D.C., which is going to be the destruction of Donald Trump, but he does not have immunity in Georgia. So either way, he's going to get fucked. And the same thing is probably going to happen to John Eastman, except in reverse. He may get a deal in Georgia, but he won't in D.C., at least that we know of. Now, the important thing to remember is just because you get a deal, just because you get a deal doesn't mean you stay out of jail. Doesn't mean that at all. Just means you might get less time in jail. I don't think you have to worry about John Eastman. He'll get his, whether it be in Georgia or D.C. or both. But Bonnie Willis is focused on those three, and she will do whatever she has to do to get that done. All right, Melanie, thank you very much for the email. Don't worry about Eastman. He's going to be going through some things, as Donald Trump would say. Next one comes from Jace in Texas. Hey, Mike, your buddy from Texas, Jace. Well, if any more proof was needed that the polls saying Trump is beating Biden is bullshit, this story from Politico offers more support. Republicans know their orange Jesus Trump can't beat Biden. They are now asking Democrats to help Haley. No way in fucking hell am I going to support her or any other Trump enabler. Dems need to calm down and keep up the fight. I personally think the scare tactic polls will backfire against Republicans. If anything, another Trump presidency would scare the shit out of all the thinking, sane Americans, even so-called moderate Republicans, if that exists anymore. I'm not a fan of Chase or its leader, Diamond, who wants Haley elected so they can cut so-called entitlements that we've all paid for. Don't think it can happen down here in Texas. Just had almost 1 million lose Medicaid insurance, mostly children, but our governor is more interested in pushing his so-called school choice on us. Texas also has recorded numbers at food banks, record numbers at food banks. But Texas, a red-ass state, is prospering. BS. Hell, we can't even keep the lights on. Joe and Dems aren't perfect, but goddamn, at least they give a fuck about those of us paying our fair share of taxes. Stay strong, as the late great Texas J.R. Ewing once said. Don't let the bastards get you down. Don't worry, fight for that coming blue wave, Jace. And you're right, Jace. This whole thing with Social Security, them jumping on board and trying to do away with Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, is just a big ass loser. You think that overturning Roe v. Wade gets their ass kicked? Wait till you go after Social Security. And if Nikki Haley has anything involved in that, all they have to do is expose that. And once they do, it's a fucking loss for them. As much as abortion affects a lot of people, nothing like Medicare or Social Security. All they have to do is get a whiff that they're looking to take that away. I mean, this is the type of thing that keeping people alive. They're living off their Social Security or getting health care through Medicare. You fuck with that, you'll have 90% of the country up your ass. And I can't believe that they continue to pound on this, because no one's going to vote for a Republican if they play that shit. All right, the next email. I'm writing to talk about how most of our mainstream news outlets are failing us. I've noticed how very few news sources are talking about the fact that Trump has vowed to toss the U.S. Constitution and change the powers of the president and the executive branch to imprison his enemies, thus becoming a dictatorship. I've seen some news stories saying that Trump can win the presidency and then fail to mention what it will do to our country if he did. They do not mention Project 2025. It seems as if they're trying to keep their jobs if we would become a fascist state. They seem to be afraid of Trump. I agree with you that this plan of theirs is a pipe dream and most likely will fail. I do believe, though, that that is the news outlet's job to explain to the American people what life would be like if he did win. I want to see our government do something to hold these people responsible to keep their broadcasting license. With no other options, I am for reinstating the fairness doctrine. What are your thoughts, Max? Yeah, the fairness doctrine should have never been done away with. But that was thanks to the Republicans. That's why we have the problems we do today. That no matter who you are, if you look at a different news source, you've got different information. And because everybody has different information, we have, of course, this divisiveness in this country. I've said before, the media is as much responsible for Donald Trump becoming president and the mess we're in right now as anybody. And that's something we have to fix. As long as we have people like Donald Trump and the Republicans who are willing to try to hoodwink or gaslight America, and these people that are supportive of that, we're still going to have problems, no matter who's doing it, Democrats or Republicans. The fairness doctrine is something we should bring back. I don't know that we can. I don't know that everybody would jump on board, but it would go a long ways as to fixing this country. That's why, when we talk about the Georgia trial being on TV, why that's important. That's not the fairness doctrine, but everybody gets the same information from the same source. Now, if they're unable to figure out what they saw and they're wrong, there's not much we can do about it. But we in this country are deserving of all the facts and the truth so that we can make some choices. I mean, that's the basis of journalism, and we don't have any journalism anymore. It's all about clickbait, tabloidism, and trying to get more people to watch your show. The people who are out there that are saying that Donald Trump can win, they're flat out lying to you. If you really look at the facts, there really is no path for Donald Trump to win. He didn't have enough support in 2020. Since that time, he's done nothing to gain more support, not even gain enough support to combat that 7 million that he lost by. He first has to get over that hump, and then he has to get more. And he's done nothing to that effect. And everything that's going to happen between now and November 2024, none of it is going to help him. So just based on that, throw in the overturning Roe v. Wade and some of the other crazy shit, some convictions, he doesn't have a fucking prayer. If he ends up being the nominee, well, then the Republicans have basically flushed the 2024 election down the shitter. As long as Donald Trump is the focus of an election, he is a loser. Yes, he won in 2016, but ever since that time, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2022, everything he touches is a loser. So for people to say, oh, he's going to win in 2024, I just ask him, where do you get that from? What facts tell you that? Polls? Well, we know polls are bullshit, so fuck you. That's not going to happen. We have a lot to fix in this country, and it's not just our politics. It's not just our politicians. Our media is a fucking mess, both the left and the right side. And that's going to be a harder thing to fix. You got to understand the reason why the media can get away with the things it does is because that's what the vast majority of the public want. They're too lazy to look at the facts and think things out themselves. They want to be spoon-fed and then have somebody tell them what they believe. And as long as there's more money in lying to people, which is the case, there's more money in making these people afraid, that is the case, then we're going to continue to get served by our media this way. And it's going to be hard to come out of a problem like we have now without the help of a decent and fair media, because this is where people get the information. This is why when I talk to Trumplefucks and give them a fact or a situation and they say to me, I never heard of that, they're being honest with me. They have never heard that. And therein lies the problems as to why we have divisiveness. If you don't know all the facts, then it's hard to argue with you, because what I'm saying sounds like a total fabrication, even though it's not. Yeah, we've got a long ways to go with this. The fairness doctrine would be a good start, but we're so far down the rabbit hole right now, it's going to take a long time to get out of that. And it's going to take the people of this country saying, no, we don't want that shit anymore. We want real factual shit. And I don't know that this country is ambitious enough to do that. We're lazy. We want it reminds me of when I was a little kid. My mom, who was a very smart person in her own right, she did like the tabloids. You'd go home and on the kitchen table, you'd see the Inquirer and all the other tabloids there. I don't think she really believed them, but it was entertaining for her to read. And it can't help but have some impact on your beliefs. I mean, if they tell you that Burt Reynolds is the sexiest man alive, well, maybe you're going to buy that. I don't know if he was the sexiest man. I can tell you this, he's not alive anymore, so it's got to be somebody else. Anyhow, yeah, we've got some work to do. We've got some things we need to fix, and it is a problem, a big problem. Well, we heard some happy or sad news, depending on who you are and what you think. Henry Kissinger, you remember him? He was the Secretary of State for Richard Nixon. He also worked for Gerald Ford. Henry Kissinger, the toweringly influential former Secretary of State, who earned a reputation as a diplomat, but drew international condemnation and accusations of war crimes for his key role in widening the American presence in Vietnam and the U.S. bombing of Cambodia. He died yesterday at 100 years old. Like they say, only the good die young. Now, I remember Kissinger. A lot of people hated the guy, and probably for good reason. If he was part of expanding and lengthening the Vietnam War, then yeah, he's a motherfucker. That war was something we never should have gotten into. The hippies knew better, but the old white people thought, no, you got to fight for your country. So what happens? We go there and fight. It goes on forever. There's no relief. And then finally, we just pack up and get the fuck out of there, turn tail, and run. The whole exercise was a waste of time, money, and the lives of Americans. 50,000 some people died in the Vietnam War unnecessarily. And if he was part of the reason why it continued when it should have been stopped, yeah, he's a fucking asshole. But you have to understand about Kissinger. He was a big star back in those days. Believe it or not, as you look at the pictures of him, he was known to be kind of a sex symbol. He dated a lot of movie stars like Jill St. John and some other people. I guess his position, his power, his intellect was enough to overcome that he's short and stocky and kind of troll looking. Well, he died at 100 years of age, and as I say, this proves only the good die young. Kissinger is a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany. He reached the pinnacle of the American political establishment and in turn became an unlikely household name. He was Secretary of State and National Security Advisor under two Republican presidents, Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, and advised powerful leaders in both American political parties for decades. Even after he was out of office, people always went to him. He was a smart guy. He had a lot of experience. Now, he came to be seen as one of the leading diplomats and international relations intellectuals of the 20th century, an exponent of realpolitik who orchestrated the normalization of relations with China and helped ease tensions between the U.S. and Soviet Union. Now, believe it or not, Kissinger won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating the settlement that ended the Vietnam War, jointly receiving the award with Le Duc Tho of North Vietnam, who refused the honor. Kissinger helped open diplomatic relations between the U.S. and China during the Nixon administration in the early 70s. So he was part of the reason why the Vietnam War expanded, and then he helped to get the deal done to get Americans out of there, and he gets a Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't have to beg for it. He didn't have to threaten for it like Donald Trump tried to do. He just fucking got it. The thing is, he was also one of the most singularly reviled public figures of his age, one whose legacy is inextricably bound up with the bloodshed around the world. In the eyes of his critics, he was synonymous with the brutality of American power and some of the costliest foreign policy decisions in modern history. Now, most Kissinger detractors denounced him for the central role he played in expanding U.S. military involvement in Vietnam, bringing wide-scale bombing campaign to Cambodia and supporting brutal regimes in Argentina, Chile, Indonesia, and Pakistan. His most vociferous opponents labeled him a war criminal, and some called him to face charges at The Hague long before Jack Smith. Now, in academia and politics, Kissinger strove to project the myth of being a no-nonsense, half-European, real politiker capable of explaining to naive America how to behave on the international stage, according to Mario Del Perro, who wrote the 2009 book, The Eccentric Realist, Henry Kissinger and the Shaping of American Foreign Policy. Kissinger's worldview revolved around great power competition, the idea that decisions made by the U.S., its allies, and rivals are generally motivated by their national interest rather than concerns about others or even accepted moral norms. Now, the dark narrative gains traction in the U.S. during times of great crisis and difficulty, such as the 1970s and today, rather than during the post-Cold War Western optimism of the 1990s. That's from Del Perro, who is an international history professor at Sciences University in Paris. So we've got Henry Kissinger has passed away. He's dead and gone. And like I say, back in the 70s, if you were alive, he was probably one of the most famous people on the political stage, not only for his work with Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, but as I said, he was kind of a consultant for many presidents after the fact. He'd done a lot of things. He was involved in many things. You might remember, you hear about all the negative things that Richard Nixon did, and he certainly did plenty. But he also did meet with the Chinese premier, president, leader, whatever they call them at the time, and did kind of normalize relations between America and China. And at the time, it was a pretty impressive thing. Now, of course, Henry Kissinger would have been the middleman in part of that to make that all happen. Of all the things that Richard Nixon did that was negative, I think they look at him as pretty talented diplomatically on an international level, as kind of a statesman. See, what happened with Richard Nixon, when he left office, he was probably one of the most hated men in America. He was the butt of the jokes. But as time went on and people forgot about stuff, or it just, became more history than realistically what happened, he didn't get a full pass, but he got somewhat of a pass. And people interviewed him and talked to him and got input from him. He didn't suffer as a pariah for the rest of his life. I mean, still people said, Richard Nixon, fucking A. What you have to understand about Donald Trump is he'll never find that day where he will be considered a statesman or somebody who just had a rough period. Richard Nixon was truly a politician. He wasn't stupid. He was a criminal. There's no question about that. But Donald Trump doesn't have that working in his favor. He's not a smart man. Diplomatically, he was horrible. Internationally, he was a fucking mess. Donald Trump is a pariah, will be a pariah, and never will be anything but a pariah as time goes on. What Richard Nixon did in this country is about 1/100th of what Donald Trump has done. And we saw what happened to Richard Nixon. So at the very least, we should expect Donald Trump to get the same, because he's truly a criminal of this country. I mean, what Richard Nixon did is he had his people break into the Democratic National Headquarters, steal some information to cheat in the election, which is pretty bad. And then he lied to Congress about it. That's pretty bad. And he had to pay the price. He had to resign. His own Republican Party told him to resign, and he did. But you compare that to what Donald Trump did, not even close. Not even close. He put this country in so much peril. He attacked this country, probably the most prolific criminal in history, not just former presidents, but anybody. Anybody that had done all the things he's done would have been put to death. Honestly, they would have. They would not have tolerated this. But now we've got Donald Trump, who's still not really accountable. But I want you to understand, they're being careful because he is a former president. But make no mistake, he will be held accountable. He will be taken down from his perch, and he will be a pariah for all times when it's all said and done. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, going into the second half of this Thursday podcast. And here's an interesting story. I don't know that this is a surprise, but it isn't something we expected to hear right now. Multiple GOP lawmakers expect former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to step down from his seat before the end of the year. That's interesting. Why would he wait Why wouldn't he wait until the end of his term? Probably because he's tired of the bullshit. Like 30 or 40 other representatives and senators are retiring. The Congress has a problem. There's a lot of people that have just had enough and don't see any light at the end of the tunnel and saying, fuck it. And it sounds like Kevin McCarthy might be one of those folks. Now, the potential exit of McCarthy, he privately told donors he's looking to get the hell out, according to a source familiar with the conversation, could leave the House GOP with an even narrower majority for the remainder of next year till November of 2024. Think about that. We've got George Santos potentially expelled today, if that happens, and then Kevin McCarthy leaving sometime around Christmas. They've got a four seat margin at this point. All of a sudden, they will have two until they can have a special election in both cases, and that's presuming that Republicans win. This could be a problem. And if both those seats go to Democrats, well, then they're tied or somewhere close to tying. This is potentially a problem for the Republican Party, and I think Kevin McCarthy is saying, fuck them. You want to do this to me, what they did, then I'm going to leave you in a lurch. I'm going to walk away with whatever money I grifted and whatever pension I have and whatever health care I have and saying, fuck it. And I don't blame him. I don't like Kevin McCarthy. I just soon see him out of Congress, but I don't blame him at this point. Things don't look good for the Republican Party come 2024, and that's why a lot of these people are retiring now. And if you'd ever like an indication as to why I think 2024 is going to be a blue wave, just look at what these Republicans are doing now, because they see it too. And they don't want to be part of the carnage. He said, I have another week or so to decide, because if I decide to run again, I have to know in my heart that I'm giving 110%, McCarthy said. Now, there is a filing deadline in California of December 8th. So that's coming up quick. He's going to have to decide between now and then. He said, I have to know that I want to do that. I also have to know if I'm going to walk away, that I'm going to be fine with walking away. And so I'm really taking this time now, he said. Now, speculation over McCarthy's potential departure escalated ahead of the Thanksgiving recess, with multiple GOP sources noting he posted a photo on Instagram in which his district office appeared to be in the process of being packed. I think he's decided. And, this is probably the best choice for Kevin. His political career may be done. He's aligned himself with Donald Trump. Donald Trump will be going to jail. He's not going to have much of a political career left anyway. He might as well go off into the sunset and try to find something else. Multiple Republicans raised concern that the California Democrat Gavin Newsom could hold McCarthy's seat open if he decides to resign in the new year. The GOP's razor-thin majority is already on the verge of being diminished further by the potential expulsion of George Santos. That vote is expected today. Oh, actually, tomorrow. I'm sorry. Today is Thursday. It's going to be Friday. Now, GOP lawmakers have noted the awkward nature of shifting from leading the conference to being a rank-and-file member. Tensions between McCarthy and his critics have continued to flare up since his historic ouster. We've heard about the elbowing one of his compatriots in the kidney, screaming at Matt Gaetz and all that sort of stuff. It's getting a little hot and heavy in the Republican caucus in the House. Former Speaker refers to those who voted to strip him from his gavel as the Crazy Eight. Representative Tim Burchett, of course, recently accused McCarthy of elbowing him in a narrow hallway in the kidney of all places. Some rank-and-file members voiced frustrations with McCarthy attempting to kneecap multiple candidates that aim to succeed him as Speaker, arguing that the efforts minimized much of the sympathy he gained after the initial ouster. Sympathy? You kicked him out. What good is the sympathy that you might give him? The image in the rearview mirror is getting smaller by the day, one lawmaker said of McCarthy's influence over the conference. I don't think he's having a good time being a regular Joe. And I would suppose not. You're the Speaker of the House. You were desperate to get that position. You got that position, but you were only in the position for a short period of time because you wouldn't bend to MAGA. I got to be honest. If I had to do the things you had to do, meaning Kevin McCarthy, to get that job, I wouldn't have wanted the fucking job. Position and power are one thing, but if you have to give away all autonomy and give away all your power to somebody else, it's not fucking worth it. Now, McCarthy allies have praised his tenure, applauding his fundraising prowess and leadership skills. That's the one thing Kevin McCarthy did well, and that is fundraise money. Not doing that anymore. And of course, the Republican Party is in a little money trouble. Kicking him out was a little short-sighted, I believe. They said they wouldn't blame him for leaving given the circumstances, and his critics remain vocal about their grievances, with some accusing him of being bitter and petty in his remarks about those who worked to remove him. Now, I'm not protecting Kevin McCarthy, but for them to call him bitter and petty, please, motherfucker. How petty could that Republican caucus be by kicking his ass out? In the middle of trying to put together a campaign for 2024. They've done everything that's going to hurt them in 2024, and getting rid of Kevin McCarthy was one of the big things, because they put the House of Representatives in a position to do nothing. They then elect a guy who's way worse than Kevin McCarthy and not as smart and not able to fundraise. This isn't a good look for the Republican Party, and they're in fucking trouble. They should have kept Kevin McCarthy through his term and then went on to somebody else if they got back the power in the House, which they wouldn't have. Now, of course, his seat is a Republican stronghold, but his potential exit could prove to be an issue for GOP leadership until a special election is held. And when might that be? I'm guessing that's up to Governor Gavin Newsom. Being a Democrat, he may put a delay on that to continue to give the Republicans one seat less in their majority. Now, some good news. We always hear how the Republicans will tell us that the economy's bad, that it's Joe Biden's fault. But I'm looking at the facts and the numbers, and I just don't see it. I mean, if you look at the facts, the economy is pretty good, actually. Republicans and the media will always talk about the high inflation, but inflation has been slowing quite a bit over the last several months. I went and got gas yesterday, $2.89 a gallon. That's quite a ways dropping from $4 a gallon. If you bought turkeys for Thanksgiving, you paid less for a turkey today than you did in 2019 pre-pandemic. What about eggs? Everybody was screaming about the cost of eggs. Well, go buy eggs now, and they're pretty much back to normal. And then there's the GDP. The U.S. economy grew at a zippy 5.2% annual pace in the third quarter, faster than previously reported, but the surprisingly strong gain appears to have been a one-off. Gross domestic product, the official scorecard for the economy, was revised up Wednesday from an initial reported 4.9% rate of growth. It was the biggest increase in a decade if the pandemic years of 2020 and 21 are excluded. So for all intents and purposes, the economy is looking good. Joe Biden created 14 million jobs. Unemployment is at 3.9%. Keep in mind that at 4%, it's regarded as full employment. The things are really looking good in spite of what the Republicans and the media will tell you. This is all about Republicans pulling something out of their ass, exaggerating it or misconstruing it and putting it into the narrative and making people believe it. There are people out there today that will still believe that the economy is bad. I can't afford this. I can't afford that. That isn't as much about the economy. It's about the Republicans continually raping the middle class for their money and giving it to the rich. Give the Democrats a chance and you will see more money in your wallet. Households boosted spending at 3.6% pace in the third quarter, and that's down from original 4%. Consumer spending represents about 70% of the economy. The increase in the third quarter was usually large and cannot be sustained given the current level of growth in household incomes, economists say. See, that's an important figure to remember. 70% of the economy is with people spending, people like you and me. So doesn't it make sense to put us in a position to keep more of our money, to give us more help? Because the more help we get, the more things we can buy. And the more things we can buy, it spurs on the economy. But no, instead, they would prefer to just hand it to the rich people so they can throw it in their stockpile and do nothing with it and have zero effect, if not a negative effect on this economy. It's pretty simple, but they will continue to tell us, oh, no, it's a good deal. We got to give the rich people money. We got to take it from you, give it to the rich people, and they'll know how to deal with it, and you will benefit in the long run. Well, they've been telling us that for 40 years, and it has not worked as of yet. And like I always say, if you're doing something and it's not working, the best course is to do something different. And helping out the middle class would certainly qualify as doing something different because Republicans have never done that. The times that Joe Biden has helped us with the COVID relief bill and such, it's really spurred the economy and it's helped things because you give people in the middle class money. They can't just throw it in a bank account and forget about it. They've got to live. They've got to pay bills. They've got to buy consumer products. And those are the things that help the economy. So it makes no sense to give it to the rich so that we get no benefit from the money. Give it to the middle class, help build the middle class. The middle class will be able to make more money, which means they pay more taxes. They spend more money on products. It's all good for the economy. You can't tell me these people don't understand that. They just refuse to accept it because they'd rather give money to their rich buddies. Let's talk about Donald Trump for a bit. Fully contradicting of one of the most consequential outcomes for his entire presidency. Donald Trump reportedly believes that he can run as a moderate on abortion in 2024. See, he sees now that abortion is a loser, so he wants to run as a moderate, kind of straddling both sides of the fence. But that's going to be a little hard to do when we have video of him being proud and bragging about the fact of being the one that brought down Roe v. Wade. So he's changing his mind now. Donald Trump will say virtually anything he has to say to get what he wants. And you can trust nothing that he says. Hillary Clinton's not buying the bullshit. She says he thinks women are going to fall for this. The 2016 Democratic presidential nominee wondered aloud in response to a Rolling Stone report describing Trump's apparent plan to pull the mother of all flip-flops. As President Trump nominated 3 conservative Supreme Court justices who were instrumental in overturning Roe v. Wade in 2022, abolishing federal protection for abortion and dramatically limiting access to reproductive health care. Just this summer, as I said, Trump was bragging about his anti-abortion bona fides in an address during the Faith and Freedom Coalition annual conference. Just this summer, He's bragging about it. He says, I'm proud to be the most pro-life president in American history, he told attendees of the conservative gathering. And now he wants you to believe that, I can go or come either way with abortion. It's not a big deal. He thinks people will buy that. This just goes back to what I've always said about Donald Trump. He thinks he can talk himself out of any situation, that he's so smooth, he's so persuasive, he can make anybody believe anything. Well, I can tell you this, the 50% of the people in this country that got their constitutional right taken away, they ain't buying it. The rest of the people that support those women that happen to be men, they ain't buying it either. They know you're a fucking liar. They know you will say whatever you have to say to get what you want, and they ain't buying it. Trump said, from my first day in office, I took a historic action to protect the unborn. Very historic. Nobody else did anything near what I did. Other candidates vying for the GOP's 2024 presidential nomination have likewise endorsed restrictive abortion policies, with some, including former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, couching them in terms of protecting states' rights to self-govern. Well, you better tell Ohio about that, because they voted and they want to still supersede the voters there. He said, my view is this. I want the people, not the politicians, to make this decision. So let people vote in the states, Christie said, while rebuffing the idea of a 6-week federal abortion ban. We see a great exercise in democracy going on all across the country. Now, we heard this from Lindsey Graham and all these other people. No, we're not trying to outlaw it nationally. We just want the states to decide. Then they got a serious surprise when the states, the red states, didn't agree with them. They said, fuck it. We're voting against pulling Roe v. Wade. Now that bothered them. So now they're talking about the national ban. And this is how much you can trust Republicans at this point. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If nothing else was going on in this country, overturning Roe v. Wade will be the thing that sinks the Republican Party come 2024. We saw what it did in 2022. It'll be worse in 2024. Nothing else has to happen. Unfortunately for the Republicans, we have a lot of other things happening. The gun issue, the prosecutions, the impending convictions. This is not going to be a good year for the Republican Party, especially when you have a House of Representatives that refuses to do anything. This is going to be a big loser for the Republican Party. They are going down in flames in this next year. And it's going to show up in the 2024 election when there's this huge blue wave. They can try to do whatever they want to do, but it's not going to work. Once they pinned overturning Roe v. Wade on them, it was fucking over. And if Donald Trump thinks he can come out and say, "Oh yeah, I'm sitting on the fence with abortion," the Democrats are going to play that video over and over again of him bragging that he's the one that overturned Roe v. Wade. He's not going to be able to run away from that. He's going to have all kinds of problems, and as long as he's an advocate for making abortion illegal, he's done for. He cannot be elected. Now, here's an interesting story. One of the founders of the Students for Trump group was arrested last week for allegedly assaulting a woman with a gun. Didn't shoot her, hit her with it. Now, this is one of these creepy little young guys that are big-ass Trump fans, and they start a group called Students for Donald Trump. And it got to be very big. There were some 300 chapters out there. So there were a lot of Trump-la-fuck dumb fucks that happened to be in their 20s. Ryan Fournier faces one charge of assault on a female and another assault with a deadly weapon, the documents show. Fournier was released after posting a $2,500 bond on November 21st. Now, the magistrate's order states Fournier grabbed the woman's right arm and struck her in the forehead and the forearm. Fournier is ordered to appear at the Johnston County Courthouse at 9 a.m. on December 18th for a hearing. He is not, or has so far not commented on the charges he faces, but has continued posting on other content on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where he has 1 million followers. Of course he does. He's a sexual assaulter. He beats women, and he does it with guns. Of course, there's a lot of red meat eating, mouth breathing pieces of shit that follow up. One of his latest posts claimed Trump will easily defeat former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, who has been rising in the polls in her own state. Fournier, a graduate of Campbell University, serves as chairman of the Students for Trump. The group is now focused on aiding the former president's reelection, and they're going to lose on this count. No question about it. They also note that Fournier is the executive director of conservative activist group called Radical Alert. Radical Alert claims to watch and expose radicals who have taken over American college campuses. And of course, what he's talking about is liberals. I think they used to call these clowns young Republicans because they're 20 to 30-year-old kids in their Brooks Brothers suits, acting like they're very smart, and they're not, acting as support for the Republican Party because they don't know any fucking better. And now this clown, the clown that founded this organization, is now likely to go to jail. You don't get to assault people, especially with a weapon, even if it's just a matter of hitting them with it, without doing some time. So Ryan, you're going to do some fucking time, and you fucking deserve it. And if you think you're going to elevate Donald Trump to become president of the United States again, you're sadly mistaken. You would think a young college man like yourself would recognize the problems that are presented to you, and that you would understand that they are insurmountable. You're not going to be able to get Donald Trump in the presidency, no matter how many of your young freaks get together and vote for him, because there's simply not enough of them. Not enough of the Trump-la-fucks, not enough of the Republicans that are willing to support Donald Trump. He has fewer people supporting him now amongst the Republicans and independents than he did in 2020. So how do you win when you lost that one by 7 million votes? Now we know that Donald Trump and his companies are under control of the courts with running their organizations. They're afraid that he might do something further illegal, and they have people from the courts looking over his companies in case something weird happens, you know. Well, former President Trump has been placed under enhanced monitoring after Trump Organization monitor Barbara Jones identified $40 million in previously undisclosed cash transfers. And that was reported by Law 360's Frank G. Runyon on Wednesday. Jones alerted Judge Arthur Engeron, who is overseeing Trump's civil fraud trial in New York. The materiality threshold requires that defendants provide notice when entities within the trust make transfers outside the trust with an aggregate value in excess of $5 million. She wrote, adding that we observed 3 cash transfers exceeding $5 million each, totaling approximately $40 million, including a transfer of $29 million to Donald J. Trump, which I have confirmed was used for tax purposes. Another $5.5 million transfer, Jones wrote, he used to pay the sexual assault judgment, won against Trump by advice columnist E. Jean Carroll earlier this year. You may have to go back to that piggy bank. It's a weird situation. Donald Trump sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll back in, the 70s, maybe the 80s. Then he lied about it. She sued him for defamation. She won. The moment she won, he went on some show and defamed her again. So he's getting sued again. And this dumb fuck, just a day or so ago, defamed her again. She's going to keep suing this guy for $5 million here and there every time he does this shit. And he doesn't know how to stop. Donald Trump has to be the dumbest fucking human being on earth at this point. Now, the civil fraud case was brought by State Attorney General Letitia James, who argues that Trump and his two adult sons systematically lied about the value of the Trump Organization assets for years to manipulate interest rates and tax treatment. Engoron has already ruled in favor of James on the merits of the fraud allegations on summary judgment, and the remainder of this case is primarily about assessing damages. James is seeking hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, $250 million, and the dissolution of the Trump Organization. We suspect that it's going to be a lot more than $250 million, and the dissolution of the Trump Organization is likely to happen. So we are going to see what's going on here, but we have a judge that's going to make the decision, going to make the only decision. There is no jury here. It's a very strange strategy. Donald Trump has spent a lot of time attacking Judge Engoron, attacking his law clerk, and now attacking his wife. Donald Trump claims that Engoron's wife is posting negative things about him on social media. Fact of the matter is, his wife isn't on social media. Donald Trump just found this poster who went by the name Dawn Marie, and because the judge's wife is named Dawn, they presume that she's the one doing it. That's a fucking stretch. That is fucking desperation out of Donald Trump. And he had been ranting and raving about her. And I think on Friday, there's going to be a decision made by the appeals court regarding the gag order the Judge Engoron has on Donald Trump. It's on a stay now while they're waiting the final answer from the appeals court. And I've heard that it may come out Friday. And I think you can be assured that they're going to uphold the gag order, and then Donald Trump will be shut up again. But we know that it's unlikely that he will keep his mouth shut. He will most certainly violate it. And you have to wonder if this is going to be finally the case where he's held accountable. I mean, the things he was doing to the judge's wife, to the law clerk, are basically trying to encourage people to go after these folks, either with stalking methods or calls or emails. We know the law clerk gets about 30 to 50 calls a day threatening her because of what Donald Trump has done. Will be interesting to see how Judge Engoron's humor is in this situation. He was adamant about him stopping doing this. That's why he issued the gag order. But when it was appealed, he felt required to put it on a stay. And then, of course, Donald Trump does the very thing that pisses off the judge. The whole point of it, though, is really interesting because the judge is the one making the decision as to how much Donald Trump will pay. The idea of pissing off or making that judge fearful for his family's life can't possibly bode well for them when it comes down to the decision making as far as what the punishment will be in this case. Here's what we do know. We know that Donald Trump will be testifying on December 11th for the defense in the Letitia James case. We also know that he will be the last witness to testify for the defense. So you could presume that after that, this case should come to an end. The defense will rest and we'll get a decision on it. As I've said, they've already found him liable for pervasive and massive fraud. We know he's a criminal. Now it's just a matter of finding out how much he's going to have to pay. And he's done nothing to ingratiate himself to this judge He's done nothing but piss off this judge, and I think it's going to fucking cost him. All right, newly released text messages reveal that Representative Scott Perry, that piece of shit, had a deeper ties to the Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark during the 2020 election, when Jeffrey Clark was plotting to send off letters to secretaries of state saying, oh, no, we got all kinds of massive fraud. Don't count them. That didn't work out, obviously, because the acting AG, Rosen, put a stop to that. But Jeffrey Clark was made known to Donald Trump through Perry, Scott Perry. And so there's no doubt a lot of shit in text messages and emails between Perry and Jeffrey Clark and Donald Trump. And we could presume that Jack Smith has all of them. And it's not going to be good for any one of these three fucks. Now, Trump is hoping to harness the Justice Department in his bid to overturn the 2020 election. Was nearing the decision to appoint Clark as acting attorney general. That's what he wanted to do. He ultimately backed off amid a high-level rebellion at the DOJ and in the White House. But the newly disclosed text messages show that Clark was girding for the appointment, bolstered by support from Perry, who is a conservative leader in Congress. The intimate exchange between the two central figures in Trump's bid to subvert the election was disclosed in a newly unsealed court filing released Wednesday by a federal appeals court in D.C. The exchange was one of dozens described in the filing, released in connection with an effort by special counsel Jack Smith to access communications stored on Perry's cell phone. You remember, they confiscated his cell phone, which is a little ominous in its own right. Now, Clark said, POTUS seems very happy with your response. I read it just as you dictated, Perry told Clark in one exchange, to which Clark said, I'm praying. This makes me quite nervous, and I wonder if I'm worthy or ready. You are the man. I have confirmed it. God does what God does for a reason. Wonderful. Here's a clown that is some underling in the DOJ. He's questioning whether he's ready to be the attorney general, and he should. Anybody with any knowledge of him and the job thinks he was a joke. And that's why the entire DOJ and the White House said, no, you do this, motherfucker. We're all walking out, which probably would have been a wise choice at that point. There's a lot of people that are in trouble now that wouldn't be had they walked away when they had a chance. Now, in addition to being an unindicted co-conspirator in the special counsel election case against Trump, Clark is one of over a dozen co-defendants indicted with former President Trump in the Georgia election racketeering case brought by Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis. And we can presume that he may be offered a deal because he's a small fish when it comes to a pond filled with Giuliani, Meadows, and Donald Trump. Perry himself, a key House Freedom Caucus figure, has not been charged in any of these criminal cases. However, recent reports indicate that he could be facing serious challenges by both Democrats and fellow Republicans for his House seat next year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't end up on the superseding indictments with an indictment of his own, because he clearly was in the thick of things here. It'll all be very interesting to find out. Okay, the last story I want to talk about is a guy who's a really stupid piece of shit. Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana said special counsel Jack Smith's days are numbered thanks to his prosecutions of former President Donald Trump. Oh yeah, Clay, we're scared to death of you, motherfucker. You've done nothing but make yourself look like a fool. We know, of course, Smith is prosecuting Trump in federal court in Florida over the former president's retention of government documents. Now, during an appearance on Newsmax on Wednesday, Higgins discussed a court filing by Smith seeking information about Trump's Twitter account, some of which includes accounts that liked or retweeted his tweets when he was actually tweeting. Smith has only charged Trump, a couple of associates in his inner circle, but that has not stopped conservatives from suggesting Smith is targeting ordinary Americans for nefarious purposes. Well, no, he's not doing that. He's targeting folks that broke laws, like you, motherfucker. So this clown says, so let me say, regarding Jack Smith and his request for another list of American citizens under some alleged legitimate investigation effort, Higgins said, I consider it a badge of honor to be on another one of Jack Smith's list. I bet you do. I bet you're nervous. So I'll just say that his days are numbered, and American patriots are not going to stand idly by, good sir, and allow our republic to dissolve. We are prepared to fight legally and peacefully and within the parameters of the Constitution with every ounce of our might and focus. Oh, now you're all about the Constitution and you're going to fight this. Well, good luck, motherfucker, because you're a dumbass. And Jack Smith is not a dumbass. So you can make these statements, but I'm not buying it. Nobody's buying it because you're a fucking fool. Higgins has a history of incendiary rhetoric. In February, he ranted at ex-Twitter employees during a hearing and told them that they will be arrested, which of course did not happen. In June, he called for an insurrection after one of Trump's indictments. He later walked it back. Earlier this month, he told FBI Director Christopher Wray, your day is coming. Higgins also physically mixed it up in May, where he manhandled a protester. This guy is unhinged. He's not very bright. And if anybody's going to lose their seat and get their ass kicked out and maybe indicted, it's going to be Clay Higgins. I doubt Jack Smith is nervous about him at all. I'm sure Jack Smith isn't giving him a second thought. Clay Higgins is a dumbass. I've watched him for the last couple of years, and he thinks of himself as like a cowboy and an orator. He's trying to be this down-home guy that says fancy stuff with a little drawl. But it ain't working, Clay, because everything you say ends up being wrong or a lie. So keep talking, motherfucker. You will end up paying the price. Not Joe Biden, not Jack Smith, not anybody but you. You're the one that was in the middle of this January 6th situation, and there is going to be recompense for what you did. I hope in the superseding indictments that Clay Higgins' name is on that motherfucker. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.